Welcome back to the Godly Impact Podcast. I'm delighted that you are here. We are continuing today in this series, You're in the People Business. Whether you are an educator, a parent, or if you work at any kind of a company whatsoever, or you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, you're in the people business. That's right. Whether you are a plumber, an electrician, an engineer, you are in the C-suite of a company that is producing billions of dollars worth of widgets, you're in the people business because ultimately widgets don't buy widgets. People hire people. People are the ones who buy things. You're in the people business. And in this series, what we are looking at are 6 essential elements to be able to have excellent human relationships. There are 6 elements of all the different elements that exist, there are only 6 that are absolutely necessary for life on earth. Now, we need other ones as well, but not in the same way that there are these 6 that if there was some sort of element vacuum that showed up and it just sucked all of these elements or even just all of one of these elements out of the earth, life as we know it would cease to exist. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the element of oxygen, and that is empathy. And that is a whole lot more than just a feeling of kindness or compassion. So if you haven't started and you haven't listened to this series yet, you definitely want to go back and you want to listen to the previous episodes. These do kind of build on one another, and you're not going to want to miss one of these because just as we have these 6 essential elements for life on earth, there are 6 essential elements that we have to have if we are going to have our human relationships well. And these apply in marriages, they apply in parent-child relationships and friendships between colleagues, between businesses and their customers. And in last week's episode, we talked about the element of sulfur because sometimes it's a little stinky, but we have to be willing to do the work of repair, and we have to do that work well. So we talked about the work of repair last week, and today what we're going to talk about is what I'm going to liken to phosphorus. That's right. Phosphorus is one of those elements that is crucial for life on Earth. Now, phosphorus has some interesting characteristics. One is it is highly reactive. As a matter of fact, it has been used and is still used in different manufacture of certain types of weapons. And it can be highly regulated because of its high levels of reactivity. Even at some temperatures, phosphorus will just spontaneously combust. You ever know people like that just seem like out of nowhere they just spontaneously combust? Well, it's a little bit like phosphorus. It's also interesting because phosphorus is never found all by itself as an element in the natural world. It doesn't exist anywhere in nature that we know of in a natural state all by itself. It's always part of these other systems. It's part of minerals. It combines with other elements to form different types of minerals. It's part of biological systems in the form of phosphate. Now, phosphorus is crucial for energy at the cellular level. Now, I am not a chemist. I am not a biologist, but I do remember a little something called mitochondria and how important they are in all of our human systems. Without the work that these mitochondria do at the cellular level, we would cease to function. And so phosphorus is crucial for mitochondria, and it's crucial for energy at the cellular level, at the most basic fundamental level that we are. And you might be wondering, what in the world does phosphorus have to do? Why are you telling me about this? Well, stick around. It's going to make sense to you in just a moment. Another aspect of phosphorus is that when it combines with these other elements, like calcium, for example, then it actually produces a tremendous amount of stability and structure. So yeah, this highly reactive element at the very same time, when it's combined with certain other elements, becomes a compound of strength and stability. So for example, in your bones and in your teeth, about 85% of the makeup of your bones and your teeth is calcium phosphate. That is a compound formed by, you guessed it, calcium and phosphorus. So you take this highly reactive substance that's notorious for its instability, but when you merge it with calcium, it is what provides your body the very strength and structure that is needed. So what is the equivalent of this in our human relationships? Expectations. Expectations are in relationships what phosphorus is in biology. They're highly reactive. They also don't exist all by themselves. Just like phosphorus doesn't exist all by itself anywhere in nature, expectations never exist all by themselves. They're always combined with something else. They're always connected to something else. They're connected to the beliefs that we picked up in our family of origins. They're connected to messages that we've adopted from the people that we associate with, the communities that we're a part of. They're also connected to ideas that we absorb from the culture. So there's nothing about expectations where they just exist in isolation. They're always connected to something else. Now, sometimes we hear the message that love doesn't come with expectations. Okay, can I just tell you right now, that's nonsense. That is ridiculous. That is one of those messages that sounds really good and it's charming and all of that, but it's just nonsense. The reality is that love absolutely has expectations. I have expectations of my husband. I expect that he's going to come home at the end of a day if he's out working. I don't expect that he's just going to show up 3 days later with no explanation and just expect that that's supposed to be perfectly fine. I mean, we do have expectations and we should have. So get over the idea that, oh, if I have real love and maturity, I'm not going to have any expectations. That's just nonsense. We've also been told for a long time, at least here in the West, that the number one reason for failure in our relationships is poor communication. But I'm going to challenge that idea, and I'm going to suggest that the number one reason for failure in relationships is misalignment of expectations. Expectations are something bedrock. They're something measurable. They're tangible. Communication isn't the same way. Now, I understand that there are communication techniques and all of that, but the techniques always still have to have something concrete, something measurable in order to be able to use the techniques. So communication is different from expectations, and most communication never gets to the level of expectations. So I want you to imagine for a minute like a communication pyramid. And at the very top level of that pyramid, think of something where we might say it's where we talk about what you did or didn't do. You didn't pick up the kids when you were supposed to. You didn't go mail that letter when you were supposed to. You didn't get online and pay that bill when you were supposed to. Well, you went out and bought that boat. Well, you went out and bought those clothes. So there's this level that we talk about what somebody else did or didn't do, and that's a level of action or inaction. And all too often, That's about as deep as our communication goes. We go back and forth about what somebody did or didn't do. It's the level of inaction or action. We might get to the second level, which is how I feel about that. And that's good. We need to be able to talk about that. But oftentimes, that's as deep as the communication goes as well. And there are techniques that are very popular. They've been around for a long time where we reflect back. Oh, well, you tell me how you feel, and then I'll reflect back to you, and then you can tell me, did I hear you correct? And those techniques have their place, but they're not deep enough. They usually only get to about one of these first couple of levels. Now, sometimes we get to the third level, which is about what I did or didn't do. Now, we can be pretty quick to talk about what I did or didn't do in that first level when we are promoting ourselves, when we are making ourselves look good, when we are trying to showcase to somebody else how we showed up, we did what we were supposed to do. And it's not a matter that that's always wrong. It's not always a matter of being selfish. I mean, there are times that we need to draw attention to the fact that, excuse me, but I did show up. I did keep my word. I did take care of my responsibilities. So pointing out where we have done well is not automatically selfish. But sometimes when we get down to this third level, and after we've talked about what you did or didn't do, and we've talked about how I feel about that, and maybe we've even listened to how somebody else feels about that. If we get to that third level where we're talking about what I did or didn't do, when we're talking about it from an acknowledgement of failure, that's great. That's good. We want to get to that level as well. And then we want to be able to talk about, well, how I feel about that. And we want to be able to listen to somebody else and how that's impacted them. But we still haven't gotten to the bedrock of the communication pyramid. So what's the next couple of levels? The next couple of levels we might get to, which is what I want from you or what I want from me. Now, what I want from you is very different than what I want for you. And what I want from me is very different than what I want for me. But again, getting to these levels is good. I mean, it's better than just remaining at one of those top couple of levels where all we talk about are about, well, what you did or what you didn't do and how I feel about that. So it is good to be able to get down to this level where we can say, this is what I want from you. You know, this is what I want from myself. This is what I want for you. This is what I want for me. It's good for us to get to these points. The idea that somebody, if they just love us, they're going to know, that's another one of those ridiculous things. We need to own our desires. We need to say, this is what I want. Again, that's not being selfish. That's actually being kind, because clarity is kindness. When you are clear with somebody about what you want, about what you need, about what you desire, that is a kindness to them. And it's not a reflection of, well, if they just love me enough, they would just know. That's nonsense. And so if you're still kind of stuck in that kind of 13-year-old girl kind of thinking, you need to get rid of that, because that's not the adult world. But when we go to the bedrock level of communication, and this doesn't happen often, but people who really want to excel at human relationships, they get to this level. And this is the level of expectations. Because this is where I decide and I communicate and I own what I believe about my rights and my responsibilities, and what I believe about your rights and your responsibilities. You see, that's where expectations come from. They don't come from my feelings. They don't come from a list of what I did or didn't do, or they're not even about what I want from you or what I want from myself. They are about what I believe about my rights and my responsibilities. And both of those form our expectations. And when we get down to that level of communication, that is where true change, true intimacy, true connection can happen, or it's not going to happen. So why don't we have a tendency to get down to this level of communication? Why don't we get down to this bedrock level of expectations? Well, I think there's more than one reason for that. One is we're just not taught to do that. We are taught in the way that we're modeled. We're even taught a lot of times in communication techniques and books and things where it gives us some techniques. And again, they have their purpose, but they remain in maybe those top 2 or 3 levels. They don't get down to the level of expectations where I really identify and communicate what I believe about my rights and what I believe about my responsibilities and what I believe about your rights and your responsibilities. So we're just not, we don't do that because we're not taught to do that. Secondly, sometimes we don't do that because we don't have a correct understanding of expectations. We have bought into this idea that expectations are a sign of selfishness, that we're not supposed to have any. And again, that is ridiculous. We cannot live a meaningful, mature life in any sphere without having expectations. If I walk into a store and I pull something off the rack and it is marked for $29.99, I have an expectation that when I get up to the counter and that sale gets rung up, I'm not going to get charged $68.99. I'm going to expect that, okay, there's going to be whatever sales tax, is added to that or whatever. But I'm going to expect that the price that I pay for that item is the item's price plus tax, not, plus, we just decided we tack on this other fee. Now I know in that kind of setting, it can feel like, well, duh, Stephanie, I mean, that's very obvious. Of course we have those kinds of expectations. But the reality is that we have those kinds of expectations attached to all of our relationships. We have expectations if our children are in school about how they are going to be treated by teachers and by staff members. And if they're in sports, by their coaches. We have expectations of our spouses and of our children and of our siblings and all of these different relationships. And again, the issue is not that we need to try to get rid of our expectations. Rather, it's that we need to look at them and we need to identify them. Because here's the thing. Expectations reveal what I believe about my place in the world. They reveal what I think that I am entitled to and what I am responsible for. And part of the reason that we don't often get down to this level of communication is because sometimes our expectations don't make us look too good. Because when we really get honest about what we are expecting from ourselves, what we really believe about our rights and responsibilities, that might not reflect too well on us. It might make us look petty or selfish, or that we have a victim mindset or an entitlement mindset. So we need to be able to get down to this level, because this is the level at which true transformation happens of our character, number one, and number two, of our relationships. Without this, we can maintain relationships, but they will always only experience an intimacy and a fulfillment to a certain degree, because we have to get down to this level of expectations. What do we believe about our rights and responsibilities and about other people's rights and responsibilities? That's the bedrock of where true connection and true intimacy happens. Now, earlier I said that this is true not just in our personal relationships, but this is also true and applicable for businesses and for churches and schools and organizations. You have customers, you have people in your network that have expectations of you. And you know what? You have expectations of them as well. And one of the reasons that organizations don't succeed, and that doesn't mean that they collapse, maybe it just means that they keep existing, but they never reach their full potential, is because they don't get absolutely crystal clear about their expectations. What do they really believe about their rights and responsibilities as a business, as an organization? How do they measure those to be able to find out, are we actually living up to those expectations that we say we have of ourselves? And then what do we really expect about, are the rights and responsibilities of our customers, of our clients? Those are the things that successful organizations keep in the forefront of their mind. And you know what? These are never a one and done. They're not a one and done in a business setting. Oh yeah, we looked at that 15 years ago and so we're good. Check that box. Nope. It's not how it works. And they're also not a one and done in our personal relationships, because you know what? People change, right? Life moves us into different seasons. And then even if we have the same set of expectations about our rights and responsibilities, the application of that is going to change throughout life. It's just the nature of life. So just like phosphorus is reactive, we're always reacting to others from our expectations, even when we haven't given voice to our expectations, even to ourselves. But when we take our expectations and we combine these with the truths that God has established about our rights and responsibilities, a new compound forms that can give us stability and strength. So just like phosphorus, when it's combined with calcium and it creates this new compound, calcium phosphate, that gives us strength and stability in our bones and in our teeth. In the same way, when we combine our expectations and we align them, and that might mean they have to change. There might be some expectations that we have to go, that doesn't align with what God has said. So when we align our expectations with God's truths, that is when we can have stability and strength in ourselves and in our relationships. So I want to encourage you, I want to invite you, maybe challenge you this week, that you decide that at least in one conversation that you're going to start not at that top about what action or inaction, was going on, whether that's with a spouse, a colleague, a kid, or whatever. But I want you to start at the base level of that communication pyramid. I want you to begin with the expectations level. Start at the base. You might work your way up. But if you start at the base, I bet you're going to find that you can spend a whole lot less time arguing back and forth, working your way down that communication pyramid, because you're going to be able to get to the heart of the matter. What are you expecting? What do you believe are your rights and your responsibilities in a relationship and in a situation? And what do you believe are someone else's rights and responsibilities in a situation? Be courageously honest about what you are expecting of yourselves and others, because just like phosphorus, our expectations are there and they will be highly reactive until we learn to combine them, to bring them into alignment with the truth that God has established for us. And that is when they can give us and our relationships the strength and the stability that we need. All right, my friend, that's going to wrap us up for today. And I invite you back next week as we continue this series. You're in the people business. In the meantime, remember this. You have an impact. That is immeasurable, eternal, and irreplaceable.